Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kym Durham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I'm your host, Kym Durham. I'm a second-gen psychic medium. And today I'm really excited to talk about a trip that I took recently with my daughter, Aubrey.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm back.
She's back. She's back for Bootober. We had such a wonderful trip. And I lovingly teased that, where should a second-gen psychic medium with a burgeoning third-gen go on vacation for a couple of days for a mother-daughter trip? Anyone? Anyone for Bootober? If that's right. Salem. Who guessed Salem? Yes.
I did.
That was her request. We went to Salem, Mass for a mother-daughter trip. Throw some stuff in the car and off we went. And I was just so thrilled. We planned this. I like that Aubrey's a bit of a patty planner like I am. Like if we're going to go someplace, let's try and see what we'd like to see. We put down what we really wanted to see each of us, what was on the list to do. And from that, we made stuff up. I like the easy breezy way as well. Have one thing planned today and the other kind of, see how the day unfolds. If you've ever been to Salem, it's beautiful. It's classic New England type of architecture, Federalist style. Would remind you the one street, Aubrey, that's that main thoroughfare.
Essex Street.
Thank you. But in the neighborhood where all the Georgian and Federal style, wasn't it beautiful?
So Church Street was another one.
Yeah. And would remind you a little of Georgetown. For those in Virginia, some of you, if you've been to Haddonfield, kind of like that. But it was just amazing. We booked an Airbnb. And fair warning, the lovely owner did tell us that it was third floor. So we got a legs workout.
Got my steps in.
Yeah, we got a lot of
steps. We really did get our steps in on this trip. So heads up, if you are going to Salem, put on your best walking shoes because you will be walking.
Yes. Yeah. I break out those Hokas. I'm not a paid subscription, sponsor yet, but they were fabulous. We got a new pair and God, did we put steps in. So we booked an Airbnb that was about a 10 to 12 minute walk into town. And if you've been to Salem, it's one way in, one way out kind of thing in the middle of like a town on the side of the Bay of Gloucester, I believe. And our Airbnb, lovely, was on the side by the Bay of Gloucester where we could walk in. So we did break the trip up, driving up to Mystic, and we did the Mystic Pizza thing. Got to do it if, old school. Julia Roberts and a few other burgeoning stars of the 90s, but I spent the night there and then headed into Salem. Stayed at the Airbnb. It was fabulous.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth, you rock. You rock. So our first night there, we decided to do
what better way to walk into Salem is literally walk in at night and go around the streets of Salem to get our bearings. So that's exactly what we did. We did a night tour and it took us, Dawn, who was our tour guide, we started off in the town hall, which you've definitely seen in movies of like Hocus Pocus where the parents had their party. We started at the town hall and then we just made our way around. We hit up Charter Street Cemetery. We did a little drive-by from the witch's house, which we'll get more into a little bit. We also learned so much. We stopped by at the Charter Street Cemetery, the memorial, where they commemorated all of the people who were hung during the witch trials of 1692.
There was 14 women and 5 men, and they have like stone benches. And it was really, I went, it's very funny. When I was younger, I was not a history buff. I was, Mr. Parker, God love you, and U.S. History 1. I used any reason, my Latin meetings and student council meetings to get out of your class. But as I've gotten a little older and wiser, I appreciate history. So it was really neat to take this tour and for them to tell us about the history, not only of the history of Salem, but also this, the sinister, darker part of it. And, being a little bit of a paranormal buff, we did bring some equipment with us. And when we were at the Charter Street Cemetery, I broke out, I used 2 devices. I used, a couple, right? I used something for an SLR, which could pick up energies. I also used a ghost box. We had a major hit on that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we were at the Charter Street Cemetery. It's at night. Ooh, very cool. And by the way, this is the first week of October before it got absolutely cray-cray because it becomes Mardi Gras. Halloween meets Mardi Gras.
1 million people
Yeah, they quite literally have 1 million people
in
there.
the month of October.
So best go. And we had gorgeous weather. Thank you for the weather gods. Just amazing. But so Charter Street, we're there. I'm using the app, the Ghost Paranormal Science Toolkit. And it has a lot of different apps within it. Now, I've used this at Waverly and had an amazing hits with spirit speaking through it. In fact, I talked about it. Aubrey and I, our previous podcast, talked about how the nurse spoke to us and how we also got children giggling and on it. So it was tested, battle proved, and tested. So at the cemetery, I started to scan around. Now it's at night, and I used this one. It's called LiDAR, and it picks up energies within a field, and it's kind of like heat signature, but can actually pick up people. So I start scanning, and I'm, listening to the tour guide, and we had a moment to walk around. And during that time, I'm scanning, and all of a sudden, I start to see energies emerging from the actual headstones. And I'm standing there going, is this really happening? Like, I kind of look at this with, and not just, I'm the hardcore kind of scientist. Like, I need to see something for it to know that it's real, that it, and so I look down at the box and I'm trying it again. And sure enough, 2 of the headstones actually had figures standing next to it. And I was blown away by that. And I was like, oh my God, this is the great way to start our first night in Salem, is to have that kind of paranormal experience. What did you think of that area?
I'm always, put me in a good cemetery any day. I'm roaming around, but I am too a history buff. So learning the history alongside of everything. For me, I did see some shadows walking around. For me, it kind of happens more quickly. It's more of a glimpse than anything else. I was there to soak it all in. I was letting you be the techie for the first night while I was just oohing and eyeing everything our tour guide said.
Aubrey was like a little kid at Christmas. She was just, oh, look at this. And isn't that great? And quite literally oohing and ahhing.
Exactly. Like I said last time, people go to Disney World. I go to Waverly Hills. I go to Salem.
Yep.
Those are my attractions. But for me, in the first night, definitely saw some shadow figures. Orbs were another instance that I had at the cemetery. We actually couldn't walk through the cemetery because they shut it off for tours, but we were right near the memorial. And I have to say, for me, being more of an empath, I definitely felt a lot standing near the memorials, standing by the benches, seeing the tokens that were left for these people.
That was interesting that people... And talk about the shells that they left.
So yes, thank you. So if you notice, when you do eventually if you go to Salem, you will see at these memorials, they're seashells that are placed. And it is said that because it is a fishing area, people would leave seashells for those as a commemoration that they will come back from their voyages.
Yes.
I thought it was very touching.
Some roses were left.
I mean, yes.
It was
beautiful. It was beautiful to see how these lost lives were commemorated and memorialized in the way that they should have. Because, whatever you believe in your belief, spiritual wise, I believe these people were wrongly accused, and Salem does a very good job at making sure they respect the lives that were lost in their town.
We didn't talk about when we may have gotten ahead of ourselves about the actual witch trials. So talk about that.
So they started in 1692. If you can believe this, the trials themselves only lasted about 9 months, which if you think about it,
February 1692 to May of, I think, 93. Yeah.
And in that time, 19 people were tried and hung. That's a lot. How do you, in a town where, Puritan beliefs, the laws got so outrageous that at one point they even passed what was it called? A sentient law, where if, let's say, I had a dream about Kym Durham and she was doing witchy, spooky things, I could go to my authorities and say, I had a dream about her, so that must make her a witch.
Yeah.
We'd be toast back then. we'd be done.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have made it.
This is true. This is one time. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
No, it's true because our laws are based upon proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And back then, it was people. It could be the way you looked at somebody. It could be the way that you were putting your crops in. I mean, it was like interesting, all the different reasons. Go ahead.
Hell hath no fury like a Puritan scorns. That's
Yeah, it was just interesting, all the different reasons that people found people to be witches. And even children that were out playing and laughing and singing a song. If someone viewed that behavior as abnormal, boom, that was it. There was a swift trial, if you want to call it that. Do you remember how they, and I had taken pictures about conjuring, about what that was and about what you can't do. And you're absolutely right, I'd be toast. But do you remember the witch's cake? What that was made of?
Oh, yes.
There was a belief that they put together a cake and that if you ate that, you would then be it would take away from you being a witch.
Yes. There was urine.
That was the main
spicy
ingredient.
Little urine
Yes,
cake.
there was. Rye and wheat and barley, but mostly urine.
Some mud.
Yeah. And they would bake that and you would have to eat it.
350 degrees.
25 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Poke a toothpick in it. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, witch's cake. It was really, really interesting. So the first night, we got the history of it. We got the deep dive of it. We got to go to different site locations, the Charter Street being one of them. The second day, we got to do, it was wonderful. Aubrey got up. If any of you have ever gone to Disney and did the lightning pass thing and you have to be up at butt crack at 7 and you just push buttons until, yay, you've hit the lottery and you've won a ticket. That's kind of like what it's like to get a ticket to the witch's house in
anywhere.
October. Yeah, really, but especially in October. So Aubrey scored that. That was pretty amazing. Now, it's a bit of I don't want to say it's a self-guided tour. There are tour guides in there to ask questions, and boy, did we. The young lady, and forgive me, you're usually better with names, but
are you talking about the witch's house?
With the marking over the staircase. I forget her, but she was lovely.
Mary, I think.
Let's go with Mary.
Mary.
And she would point out the different cabinets, the woodworking, why they would have liquor over here, why they would keep things separate. Obviously, back then, your sugar cabinet, those spices that came from China. She had asked about a piece of pottery, and I had looked and I said, it came from, the silk trade route. But she pointed out all of this. And it really, for those that are interested in history, there's plenty in the witch's house. People just walk through and go, oh, all right. They talked about the shoe. In fact, you find those in homes in the slave homes and many other homes in the South where they would bury a shoe for good fortune for the house. And they showed a leather shoe that was found when they were doing some renovations there, or restoration work, I should say. But over the threshold of the steps, there was, it's not a pen, it is pretty much take a T and then keep putting X's in it to build all of those lines all the way through. So you have a circumference of just lines, like a cross and then, X's. And that was a marking over the steps that anybody who came into the home, if they were a witch or evil spirit, that would dispel them. So there was like all of this stuff about keeping the energy positive, I'll just say.
Which is very ironic considering they're using sigils.
Okay.
To keep evil out.
Yes. Which
if you know your history with Wiccan or anything like that, that's a big integral part of what they practice. Putting salt on the threshold, putting certain sigils somewhere for protection. So it's very ironic how these trials happen, even though in these Puritan beliefs, this is what they thought to keep them protected. I find it very ironic.
Yeah, it was that was a really, that to me was worth it. We also went through, now I tried to do a little bit of a paranormal investigation there.
We weren't the only ones. There was people with REM pods trying to get energy blasts, taking pictures. It's a very tiny home. Heads up if you're hitting over 5'8".
Yeah.
The thing with these houses back then is lower ceilings keeps the heat in. Higher ceilings meant you were a little bit more wealthier. So yes, there are low ceilings. So it's a little bit of a tight, cramped space. But there were other people also doing investigations while we were in there.
Yeah, that was cool to watch.
That was fun. That was like, hey, there's some people that
there's our people.
Yeah.
But again, we balanced the paranormal with the respect of the history, which to me made it that much more enjoyable.
So the witch's house, owned by Judge Jonathan Corwin, it is the last standing house in Salem that has ties with the trial.
It's pretty remarkable to walk into a house that's from the 1640s. I mean, like it just, when you look at the architecture, what they used to build the home. And if you look at the sides of it, because of the pressure of the building, it kind of bows out by the foundation. A little bit like an A-frame because of over the years of just the weight. Looking at the furniture, looking at the they had tiny feet, okay? I have size 10 feet. And Aubrey?
I'm pushing 11.
Yeah. So...
On a good day.
Us 5'8"-ish and 5'10.5"-ish.
Tilting our heads to the side.
So just not en petite.
And those staircases? Woo.
Woo.
Yeah.
Speaking of staircases.
Yes. Great intro for this. During one of our day trips, we also took a tour of the House of Seven Gables, which, if you like your literature,
I do.
Written by Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Took 3 semesters of it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
English majors. That also touches upon the Salem trials. We got to tour that house, which was amazing. Suzanne, our tour guide there, what a lovely person.
She was such a sweetheart.
She was hilarious.
She was funny.
What a great way to start our tour. And she talked about all of the 7 Gables, why it's called the 7 Gables. And she took us from the attic all the way down to the basement. We did a lot of traveling through there. But there is
more steps.
And there is a hidden staircase.
Do tell.
That was interesting going up. My memory escapes me, but
Elizabeth, one of the owners.
Yes.
There was talk of there being this hidden staircase in the writings.
Right.
But there actually wasn't one. But for tourism, because she was a widower and had children, she built the
money.
Well, girls, because she had the general store in there, and she would. I mean, quite literally, she was an avant-garde for tourism. She started with little trinkets and things like that she would sell to support her family over the Nathaniel Hawthorne's 7 Gables, the house. So she built the staircase, and it, you're standing by a fireplace, and you're like, what do you mean there's a staircase? And, one side was a wood cabinet. And then the other side, she opened up a door, said, this is a staircase leading up to the attic. It was.
Yeah. Caroline Emerton. Yeah. That is the philanthropist who we were talking about. So much so her work is being commemorated today.
That's right.
The House of Seven Gables, they dedicate their lives to helping women from all over.
She was like the social worker.
Yes, back then. And she never remarried because if she had, she would have lost all of her fortune to her husband.
Keep your paper, boo.
Yeah. Best revenge. Best revenge is
right.
Best revenge is your paper, and that's exactly what she did, and is still being used to today. So yes, we did the House of Seven Gables. My gosh, this itinerary.
So when the tour guide had talked about, and we have any volunteers, whose hand went up first?
My mother loves to answer questions in a tour. Let me tell you.
I believe all tours are interactive. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So off I went, all petite size of me going up, going, oh, this is fun. And it was pretty neat to do that, and talk about the history. But, our tour guide rocked it there. And heads up, right across from the parking lot of the Nathaniel Hawthorne's 7 Gables, right, was the oldest candy shop.
The ye old Candy shop.
1806.
Yes, one of the oldest.
The oldest, yeah.
Oldest candy.
So girls had to go over and get some chocolate.
Little sweet.
And to the right of that, the parking lot, you see a little gift shop.
100 Derby Country Gift Shop.
She was fabulous.
We're actually matching
we
today.
Are.
Yes.
We picked up a little. We didn't, like when we went shopping, we weren't like, I got one t-shirt, one sweatshirt. And the one sweatshirt I got was from she couldn't have been any kinder, nicer.
Marin was her name.
Yes.
Marin, I believe was her name.
And we picked up a few Christmas gifts there, but you can leave your car. Let's talk about parking, kids. There is
none.
So, if you're going to get an Airbnb, make sure it has a parking spot, because in the month of October, you need to have a permit to park on the streets.
It is resident only.
Yeah, $75, and they tow. They do tow. So that's not a way you want to start your vacation. So we use the Salem app, which would give you daily, it has happenings. It tells you what's going on, especially if you go into the month of October. It's a must.
It shows you where public bathrooms are.
Yep.
Where public parking is. It will give you updates throughout the day of which roads are closed.
Yeah. So that was great to have. So did we do paranormal in the Seven Gables? I couldn't as much.
It was more history based. Beautiful gardens on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean.
It was just it was overlooking the water. If you walk to the end of the street, which is a hop and a skip, I'm all about taking in some water and neurobiology and just chilling. And it was just beautiful. I couldn't have said enough about that tour. Totally worth it. So let's talk about our next tour. Or what else would you like to add into what we did?
I mean, the list goes on and on. We were rocking and rolling every day that we were there. And, one of my favorite tours that we did was actually the Pingree Gardner house, which is right off of Essex Street. You might walk by it when you're on Essex Street because everybody wants to do their shopping, but it's this beautiful home surrounded by this wrought iron gate.
Yeah.
So it's like almost, it kind of reminded me of New Orleans.
Yes, it did.
A little bit, like structure wise, minus all like the willow trees and the the ivy. And this is where the Pingree Gardner murder happens. Murder. Ooh, spooky. Yes, we had an interesting tour that day, which is probably why it's on my list of the most favorite, because it is the most memorable. So what we did.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the PEI Museum does a tour called Sinister Streets. And what you can do is you get behind the scenes access to another original homes built back in the 1640s. The Ward House, we got to travel back in time.
Yes.
That was a lot.
Going through the Quaker meeting place from the 1640s. That was pretty cool too. But it was neat that, like when we went to the Ropes Mansion, that was a hocus pocus moment, taking a picture.
Allison's house, for those who are big hocus pocus buffs.
There we go. Reference it away.
Gardens, beautiful. You can roam the gardens because they only do tours over the weekend. That's the big thing with Salem is they, moneymakers are on the weekends. So a lot of the tours, they wait till the weekend. But you can roam the gardens all through the weekday, and beautiful gardens.
Yeah, our trip was Tuesday to Friday, which I loved because it was
perfect.
It was perfect.
Perfect.
So when we went on the Sinister tour, it was our last day. And, we were doing, that last little bit of history with a paranormal all wrapped up into one. So I'll let you start about the tour.
Oh, me. Okay. So, being a history person, I love taking tours. I don't know everything. We want to, be engaged while also getting the sights in. If you've ever done a museum tour, how do we say?
Can be a tad dry.
A little dry.
A little dry and a little dry. We'll just go with dry.
We'll just say dry. I loved learning about all the history in these tours.
So what Aubrey's trying to say here, and we're trying to be very delicate because the tour that we had, may I just say 2 to 3 minutes in for this last tour, we looked at each other and thought that we were on an SNL sketch. Can I say that? I did. Yeah. I looked at her. She looked at me. I go, are we being punked? Are we?
Where's Ashton? Yeah. There was definitely a point we looked at each other like, they're going to be our tour guide.
Yes. And it had less to do with, it was just, how do we
See, we can't even.
Yeah,
It's hard. It's hard. We're trying to be nice.
Yes,
You know,
but
the
it was-
people in Salem, they are hardworking.
Speaking of.
They are hardworking people, individuals. Like they really rely on tourism. So I don't want to sit here and say,
No.
you know,
Neil, who randomly walked us to downtown and told us all kinds of stuff. People stopped and saw our tags from New Jersey and said, "Oh my God, I lived in New Jersey." Like they went out of their way to talk to you, to help you. I can't say enough nice
the
things.
sweetest people.
Sweetest people, truly the sweetest people.
What I will say is our tour guide, it sounded like it was like her second day working.
It did.
And that's okay.
And
we learn and we grow
we
from
do. You
that.
only get better the more times you do something. It just was a little tough.
We were the guinea pigs.
There we go. We were.
And let me just put it this gently. I did more research after the fact, and I learned a little bit more after the tour than during the
the
tour.
words probably and like were used quite a bit.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and in history, it kind of either is or isn't.
We got a lot of probablys.
We did. We did. So
Left it up to your imagination.
we did. Yeah. But
So the Pingree Garter Murder House is famously known for the murder of Joseph White, who was a huge merchant in that town.
very wealthy.
Very wealthy, had a lot of connections. From what we got from the tour,
Yep.
he was very wealthy.
He was I mean, he's 82 and had accumulated great wealth because of having so many boats and dealing in trade.
So Joseph White went to bed one night, and the next day he was found in his bed, bludgeoned to death. Everybody couldn't believe it. What happened to Joseph White? He was hit over the head several times.
Somebody wanted him dead.
Somebody was very mad. You know, there was a brief investigation. Apparently, he was hit with a lead-filled bat.
Yeah, somebody wanted him dead.
This is very intentional.
So when we get to the murder spot, the suspect climbed in the bottom window,
Broken, yeah.
broke in, came through the living room, went up the steps. And when we're walking into the room,
Mm-hmm.
our tour guide asked, "Does anyone know what happened here?" And again, we didn't do a lot of history before we went because we wanted to learn about it.
We went in cold, and I
But
like
have to
doing
tell
that.
you, as an intuitive medium, as soon as I got to the doorway, I felt someone stabbing me.
Same.
Yeah. And Aubrey and I looked at each other. And, you know, when you mentioned that to the tour guide, her eyes light up. It's kind of like, how would you know that kind of stuff? Like, because it was interesting. She got a kick out of that part of it. Her eyes lit up about the whole murder thing. But here there was a baseball bat. It was a little morbid, but we all like what we like.
We have our vices.
Right. And she's talking about the bat. Here it was weighted at the end with lead. So this murder weapon, this was obviously thought out. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was well thought out. So someone came in and hit him in the head and then proceeded to stab him 13 times. So they wanted him, like I said, dead.
Yeah.
So go on so we're in the bedroom.
A beautiful bedroom. I mean, they tried to keep it as preserved as
Yeah, that
possible.
home was just,
I mean,
yeah, it screams of wealth even now, between the fine linens, carpet, furniture, items from China, the gold that was in there. It was really, really, the staircase is just magnificent. But we get through the bedroom.
and I had my initial sight, and this is something that also happened to me in the witch house. I had a hard time breathing. That's usually my
Yeah.
first indicator that something's happening, is when I get a little bit of shortness of breath, and no, it was not the dust. I took a Claritin every day. But it hits you. It hits you pretty hard. And that's exactly what happened to me in the bedroom when we looked at each other. And that's when immediately Mom took out her equipment and
Yep,
went
I
to
did.
town.
And started a paranormal investigation there in the house. Now, what was interesting is, I took pictures in the bedroom, but there was other people there, and I'm trying to be discreet. I'm there. It is, I'm on, someone's giving a tour. It's not just a private tour. I'm trying to be respectful. And, we talked about, Aubrey and I would go, "Did you feel this? I felt this. Oh my God, this is and it was really, and other people, you could see when they talked about the murder, other people were using paranormal devices as well, what they were picking up, which was pretty neat. that you could see an outline of a body on the bed. Two girls over to the left of us were huddled together. And as I walked past behind them, they're like all wide-eyed. And I can see, if you've ever used an SLR, it's like a stick figure. And it's showing something in the bed. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So the tour is now heading out of the bedroom and we're winding down. And we're going into a room at the back of the house, another bedroom, but it's empty.
Yeah. And in this room are like 12 little stools. And the only way I can describe said stools, if you think about a director's chair without the back and about half the size.
It's a camping stool is the best way I can say.
For children.
Exactly.
I was more afraid of the chairs than I was of the paranormal in that house, needless to say.
So we had a lot going on because we had the probably like tour of history. And
up to your own interpretation.
going on. I have something amazing happening on my ghost box. So I have a spirit box app up now, and I'm sitting there and
not listening to the tour guide.
I was not. I was,
shiny things.
Well, little ADHD sometimes kicks in. I have cat herders, and Aubrey was my cat herder for the trip. But so I put the spirit box on, and I'm sitting there, and it comes up, and the first thing that comes up on text is, "I'm right here next to you," and I'm like, "Oh, what?" And I look over at Aubrey. I show her. I go, "What?" And then guess what the next word that showed up on the spirit box? Joan. Yes, my mother's name. And then the next word was mischievous, which if anybody knew Joan, knew that she was mischievous.
Those two words simultaneously were together.
Interchangeable. So I was blown away, and that's never happened before. Didn't happen at Waverly, hasn't happened at any other tour or any other time. Now, I am all befuddled because I have this happening on the spirit box while Aubrey is kind of, I believe you were going into a bit of a hip.
I was disassociating. Just a tad. Just a tad.
And
there's only so much information I can obtain.
Yeah, we were pretty much on overload of the probably and like. But and I didn't. And I'm trying to show Aubrey so she can take a picture because this doesn't keep a bank of the words. I wasn't sure. And in the midst of that, I turned on my flashlight.
Jury's still out if my mom Joan did that or if you did. Because that would just be icing. That would be something that she would do to just get you in trouble.
Because then our tour guide became a KGB officer.
Oh my gosh. So in the midst of her with her pictures and showing the rest of the tour all the murder things that are happening, my mother is scanning the room with her phone, and then that happens and she gets all excited, and then the flashlight goes off, and this tour guide just snaps off and goes, "No flashlight." And I wake up and I look over at my mom, and my like a kid in the hand of the cookie jar. My mom goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I did. I
truly did.
There's no flash photography allowed.
I didn't know I had it on, and so I got
in trouble.
I got a little trouble because I was so excited about what was showing up on my app. It's never happened before.
No, it has not. And then when I saw Joan, I was like, oh boy, here we go. That's just what we need, another one in the mix. But that's what my mom will do. People ask me all the time, does my mom Joan come into my dreams, or does she make her presence known? Oh, yes. When Joan wants to make her presence known, she will. She doesn't come often for me personally.
No.
But
or me either, really.
But she shows me in different ways. And this was one of the many examples.
Yeah, is that she made it a girls' trip for sure.
Yes.
So I was blown away. But truly, that tour was amazing. I mean, I give her credit. Like I said,
a lot of information.
A lot of information to have to disseminate to people to remember. And our tour guide really, really tried her very, very best. We can sit back and kind of laugh and giggle at it because, it was fun. She made it fun. I don't know if that was her intent, but it was fun. The landscape of the place, the restaurants, amazing.
The Ledger. Highly recommend going to the Ledger. Big shout out to Scott, one of the managers there. Vanessa, our server.
Fantastic.
And then lastly, the pastry chef, Sabrina.
Yes.
Made a beautiful display for us for our desserts.
They asked if we were celebrating anything. And I said, yeah, the launch of a podcast. Well, I told them, what we do. And they, Sabrina, she made the chocolate.
It was like a charcuterie board.
Yes.
We had ice cream on top, and she hand wrote everything out of chocolate saying congratulations with a crystal ball and ghosts surrounding it.
Oh my God, it was so great. We have pictures. You'll see it up on the social media on Mediumship Moments. But if you're planning to go to Salem, the people were fantastic. I like doing it. I'm a big shout out to Marriott kind of girl, but, using an Airbnb because there's really not hotel chains. The Hawthorne is a lovely place to stay, a little bougie, but fabulous food.
Also has its equal amount of history.
Yes, we actually did. Had a lovely lunch with somebody who sat down next to us who we don't really know, but on the spirit world. But it was fun. So and I don't think you have to be a psychic medium to experience that. There's enough history there. There's enough residual energy, definitely. And then we were lucky enough to have some interactive things happen. So highly recommend Salem. If you get a chance, go. If you can take your daughter on any kind of trip, I highly recommend it. So Aubrey, thank you for our trip to Salem.
Thank you.
I'm ready for our next adventure. If you have any suggestions out there about where you would like the two of us to go on a paranormal investigation, I would love to hear it. If you have a place in your location in the tri-state area, reach out to Mediumship Moments on Instagram and drop me a DM. We'd love to do that as a future trip. So as I always say to everybody, and to Aubrey as well, keep chatting with your angels because they can hear you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kym's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kym Medium.